Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in again. This is Andrew. I'm here with your weekly follow-up that we do over here at the Black Tower Podcast. This, is, of course, is a follow-up to our podcast on Padan Fain, the Dankest Darkfriend. It's probably going to be a relatively short one. Obviously, with it coming up on the holiday season, especially in the United States with Thanksgiving and all. People are fairly busy. I know there's a lot of podcasts for people to keep, up and everything on. A lot of other podcasts I listen to. And with this one, there hasn't been a ton of feedback, which of course is fine. We know you guys are still listening and everything, and everything's not going to elicit feedback from everyone, which of course is perfectly fine. But we want to keep these weekly follow-ups going. So that way you get something midweek to address whatever we have heard from the last podcast that we released at any given time. I just finished maybe 10-15 minutes ago recording the episode that's going to be posted. I believe it's this coming Friday. Yeah, it's this coming Friday. It'll be posted on the 16th for you guys. I think it's a good one. I think you guys will enjoy it for sure. And there's a bit of a teaser at the end. We're revealing something that's in the works and will be coming as a bit of a present for you guys. Hopefully, something that everybody will enjoy and get involved with. But I'm not gonna spoil that here. Of course, that'll be in our podcast this Friday again on the 16th of November. So for this one, we're definitely happy to see the reactions we've gotten to the topic on Padan Fain. It's definitely one of those topics that you have to pay respect to, that nobody can read the Wheel of Time series without thinking about Padan Fain. He's an integral part of the series for sure. And he's a very dynamic character, as we talked about in the podcast. And just when you think he's gone away, he doesn't. And as we talked about in the podcast, there's no guarantee that he even went away fully at the end of the series. Ultimately, whenever we see Matt stab him in the heart with the ruby hilted dagger, and the knowledge that Matt is now pseudo, at least, immune to Mashadar and that kind of thing. But so we'll get into the reactions and everything we have. One that did make me chuckle pretty good was, I'm not going to try to pronounce your actual name on Twitter because I cannot read the language it's in. I'm not even sure what language it is in. But, that's nothing against you. I'm just saying that's why. But this is a Twitter user at Mr. Wong Yang. And it was in response to where we tweeted out the Dankest Darkfriend podcast. It says this title is quite clickbaity. Top 10 Dankest Darkfriend you have never heard about. That was pretty funny. I think it'd be hilarious to start seeing those kind of clickbaity things pop up. I mean, clickbait is often always annoying, but yeah, I could see it. It's going to be like a Mojo top 10, a Watch Mojo top 10 or something once the series comes out. Top 10 most ruthless dark friends or something like that, which would be hilarious because you've made it whenever you start seeing the clickbaity titles and everything come around. The next one is going to come from Bookworm200 Sunmade. It's Twitter user at SEJIWNMI, not MI. What is that? It says another good episode. Padan Fain is definitely the Gollum of the Wheel of Time series. However, it's my understanding that his guards in Fal Dara were not dark friends, but were corrupted by being close to him, and that corrupting power grows across the series. And that's an interesting concept that I honestly hadn't considered, and I don't know if Aaron had considered it or not. Maybe that's just one of the things that we didn't think to put together. But I could see that. I mean, obviously, there were other forces that made their way into Fal Dara and started battle to kind of cover Padden Fane's escape. I mean, this is a Dark Friend that has been personally, as close as you can personally, be touched by the Dark One, has a bit of the Dark One impressed upon himself. So this is he's obviously going to be a very important Dark Friend, much in the same way that Shadar Haran is, but not not exactly quite. He's not an ableist or anything like that, and he's not one of the Forsaken, but he's still someone that they put a little bit extra effort into creating as a hound for the Shadow. And then we obviously have that interesting dynamic, and I think that corrupting kind of ability of his comes from More Death in the Mashadar from Shadar Logoth, because that is the main corrupting factor that we see. We don't really see too much that indicates that. I mean, we know the Dark One corrupts, and obviously by being in proxy around him, it's going to be corrupting. But we don't normally see something like an infectious corruption except from Mordeth and Shadar Logoth. But with that lends validity to it, because you got this unique melding or meshing of the corruption from Mordeth and Shadar Logoth with this shadow-back Dark One touched inspired kind of motive, which you see carry over. The Black Wind, Mashin Shin, takes on this hatred of Rand and follows him from Waygate to Waygate, and he tries to even escape to get to him and destroy him, which definitely carries over from Padden Fane's aversion to Rand and his being touched by the Dark One to pursue Rand. Ultimately, denoting Rand as the Dragon Reborn. Not that Padden Fane ever really stops his hatred for Mat or Perrin. It's just more focused on Rand for sure. But I could see that, that it was corrupted. That implies to me a form of like compulsion, where his corruption could compel those guards to take and release Padden Fane from it. But there was the two, and I can't remember their names at the moment, the two that we ultimately find filleted in a tree that were clearly going along with Padden Fane's group, with the Murdral and the Trollocs and the other Dark Friends, which implies that there were several Dark Friends that were involved. And I would not be surprised to find out that there were several Dark Friends already in Faldara that maybe made their way in and out. Because we find out that Dark Friends can be found everywhere, that there's no society that they're exempt from. We see them in the Aiel, we see them in Ilion, we see them in the White Tower. You even see them with the Shanshan and everything. So they're widespread and everywhere, just like the Dark One's influences was. That sounds right-ish, right? But there's nothing to really indicate that there's any limit on where they could be. And obviously there had to be a way for all these forces to get into essentially what would mainly be like a battle fortress that Faldara was, being situated right on the Blight, on the border with the Blight, and trained. So I agree, there's definitely was more at work than just Trollocs running in. I could see Padden Fane's inherent infectious darkness having an effect on it. What I think happened was that the two original guards that you see that were around him the most, that you get introduced to when Egwene and Rand go to visit Padden Fane in the dungeons at Faldara, I believe that they may not have been Dark Friends at the start, but he might have been able to corrupt them enough to turn them to Dark Friends, if they weren't already to some degree Dark Friends already. And obviously I believe that they're the ones that came in and killed the guards that were there that night and released Padden Fane. I think you actually find out that it was one of them that knocked out Mat and Egwene and left them there. So I don't think there could be any doubt about those two being Dark Friends. And we're not entirely sure why Padden Fane has them filleted and left, because normally a Trolloc would just eat the Dark Friend. So that was obviously meant to be as a punishment and a statement, more so than just what we see, other Dark Friends being given over to the Trollocs for food when they don't reach a village in time. to secure a food source for them. Padan Fain has no qualms about that. But just a lot with how the Murderall was done. These two are obviously filleted and hung up as a statement to the people that are following them. And you see even Ingtar, who's a dark friend himself, isn't sure whether they were truly dark friends or not, and still orders that they be buried and given their last rites, because they're not sure if they were taken under duress or not. Because ultimately, we find out that they're the ones that are kind of laid with the responsibility of killing the guards at the gate that allowed the Trollocs and all in, and ultimately Padan Fain to escape. And I don't think all that could happen without either being some form of compulsion to it, and I don't think Padan Fain necessarily has the ability to compel. He obviously has the ability to corrupt. It's not entirely exactly clear how long they were in Fal Dara. It can reasonably suppose that it was quite a while, so there is a chance that he just over time corrupted those two enough, like kind of concentrated corruption to bend them to his will, which I honestly would not doubt. He actually, he gets visited by someone who's like, "Oh, it's you. I've been waiting on you," which we know from further on in the series. It could have just as easily been one of the Forsaken. It could have been Shada Haran himself, possibly, or someone else with that kind of embedded and imbued power, and they could have easily compelled those two guards to serve Padan Fain and be dark friends. So there's a whole slew of possibilities as to what could have caused this to happen. But I definitely think it's an interesting concept there, Bookworm 200, that they were corrupted from being forced to be so close to Padan Fain. I mean, we even see the insanity in the other two prisoners. One has killed himself and the other one's just, he's just insane. So obviously Padan Fain has this incredible corrupting aura of sorts. So I could see it. But I still think that they had to be dark friends of some sort, or at least predisposed towards being dark friends. And then, of course, we don't know how much of a part that Ingtar played in it as well. He never really confesses how much he did, but he does confess to being a dark friend to Rand whenever he's protecting his retreat from Flamme. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept. Let's see, where now? Oh, so this one is a big thanks to Trinity 777, leaving our first review on iTunes. So definitely a huge thanks and shout out to you. I know we reached out to you on Twitter as best as we can, and I imagine that you've probably seen it. But so this is a review you left. It said, conversation format is great. Said few Wheel of Time podcasts are doing the same thing as the Black Tower. They stand out among the rest. Instead of a weekly chapter reread, they have topical conversations encouraging the community to respond, and a weekly follow-up to recap all the responses. They are not afraid to talk about controversial issues, but do so in a respectful and straightforward way. I can't wait to see what they will talk about each week. And that is, that's a 5-star review. So much thanks to you, Trinity 777. Of course, we have no quarrels about screenshotting and plugging the White Tower podcast in with that, which of course they love, and we know that they're always listening and supporting us without fail, as we try to do for them as well. They definitely deserve our love and support. They've earned it by their own right. But a fantastic review, Trinity. We really wanted it to be a conversation format, which I think a lot of podcasts do that part. They try to make it like a conversation between the people recording the podcast as much as they can. But I do agree, when I started looking at some of the Wheel of Time podcasts, and a lot of people are doing the chapter by chapter thing, which is fantastic. I think it's something that definitely deserves to be done and something that needs to be done. And I think that section of Wheel of Time podcast is aptly covered. You've got the WOT pod through, you've got the White Tower podcast. There's so many podcasts out there that have so many facets of the series covered. We've got Everybody Hates Rand, that is a good, fantastic podcast as well. And if there, I know there's more out there. Just I'm terrible with names. So if I'm if I didn't mention your podcast name, it's not out of not thinking that you're a good podcast. It's just out of not really remembering all the names. So yeah, there was a funny string of conversation that happened. So Jen, with her personal Twitter, tweeted out her 6 weeks into launching kind of synopsis or recap on it about, inspiring a brother podcast to launch from two of their fans, which is definitely true. We were inspired by the White Tower podcast to start this podcast. And if I can find it, there was a tweet back where somebody said that they were cheating on the White Tower podcast by listening to the Black Tower podcast. And she tweeted back and was like, well, they're our brothers, so that's incest. And everybody was like, ew, and then someone was like, ew. I think we tweeted back, you. And there was a lot of likes on that. And, it's definitely funny. This is a very lively community, and it's definitely a plethora of hilarity that I think we can all enjoy. So if you're not involved on Twitter, I would definitely recommend it. I mean, we see so many character-inspired accounts that are popping up. And I'm looking at, just suggestions right now, and there's Men for Farshaw, Moradin, Messina, just absolutely fantastic stuff. But yeah, again, Trinity777, thank you so much for that 5-star review with just an amazing and inspiring comment from you, for sure. Moving on, we also have a new email that we got. I'm not going to say his last name, but it's from an individual by the name of Michael. And he says, hi, Engineer. My name is Mike. Just discovered your podcast while scouting out ideas to start my own. I've enjoyed what I've heard so far and will continue to listen and provide feedback when I can. I have a long history with the Wheel of Time series. I've read each book visually at least once, including A New Spring, and listened to the series on audiobook on a not quite perpetual loop. I joined the Facebook group and will primarily provide feedback there. I'm still interested in starting my own podcast, whether it's Wheel of Time or another subject, I'm not sure. So if you can give me any pointers, they will be greatly appreciated. Also, if you ever need a guest or fill in for your show, I would be delighted. Last but not least, thank you both for your service to this country. I look forward to great things and a lot to think about from your cast. So obviously this weekly feedback is coming on the tail end of the Veterans Day holiday here in the United States. Aaron and myself, Aaron is, retired from the military. He's finished his military service, at least for the time being, and I'm still actively in. Not to elicit any kind of kudos or thanks from that. We do appreciate the thanks that we get, but we served as we have out of a desire to do so. Obviously there's benefits to it and everything, but we definitely want to make sure we extend our thanks to the veterans out there that may be in the listening community that this may reach in any way we can, that we thank you for your service as well. It takes a lot to sign a blank check where, your life is, on the line, especially for, there's 360 million plus people in the United States. And at best, you might know, 1 or 200 people roughly or so. Obviously, it's going to be different from person to person. But it takes a lot to say that I'm willing to lay down my life for millions of people that I've never met and probably never will met for these fundamentals and concepts. So we want to thank you guys for your service to the country for sure. But getting back to Wheel of Time oriented stuff, it definitely means a lot that you found the podcast and that you're listening and that you enjoy what you hear. We want people to enjoy the podcast, and we want to elicit that kind of thoughtfulness and that feedback on what we say. We want this to trigger thought. We want this to elicit. We want it to elicit a response because we want to hear what you guys think for sure. But we want you to get done listening to the podcast, or even in the middle of it, pause it or whatever, and you're just like, I never thought about that. In the same way that Bookworm 200 is done, he's like, I was thinking maybe it was like this, and it brings more concepts for us and ultimately makes the community better. It makes us think, and I'm a big fan of anything that really can sit there and make you think. So if we have the ability to do that for even just a couple people out there, then, I think we've definitely accomplished part of my vision for the Wheel of Time podcast we're doing here. But that's really all I have for now. I know it's pretty hectic time of the year for most of us. So, but keep the responses coming, guys, for sure. Guys and gals, keep the responses coming. Again, you can respond to us on Facebook. Just look for the Black Tower Podcast Facebook group or Facebook page. We check that. You can respond to us on Twitter at Tower Podcast. We pay attention to that, of course, as well. Email at the Black Tower at Black Tower Pod. Just Black Tower Pod at gmail.com. And then we can now be found on YouTube as well. Just go on and you can look for the channel, the Black Tower Podcast, or you can look for the titles of any of the podcasts we've done. The hosting service we use, of course, is able to automatically port our podcast over to YouTube. It puts a still image with the podcast logo, podcast title, the chapter title, and essentially what looks like the sound level bars up as a static image there. We definitely encourage the community to go there and comment and have conversations with each other, just like you would on Twitter or Facebook, and everything. And you can also direct message us on Twitter. We do pay attention to that. We do check it. And we'll do our best to give feedback or reply, even if it's just a thanks, or you might maybe just a like or something. But we read it all and we look at it all. So I know this one's a pretty short feedback. Everything wasn't really intended to be very long, as none of them are intended to be that long. But definitely some thought-provoking stuff. Definitely a lot of thanks to our listeners. And keep it up. If you think of anything for us, any kind of feedback, any kind of suggestions, anything like that, obviously just let us know in any of those formats on any of those platforms, social media, email, and we'll definitely read it and get back to you as soon as possible. But thanks again, and next week Aaron will be doing the midweek or the weekly follow-up to the podcast coming out on the 16th. Again, we're releasing the next podcast this coming Friday, 16 November. So be sure to tune in for that one. And I think, again, it's another one that you'll enjoy. But thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you later.